going back to the cheese a little bit here with my final pick, and that is, have you ever heard of the 80s movie Bloodsport? No? Okay. I sort of thought it was one you might have at least have heard of. Okay, so Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and it's a martial arts movie. That's the way to sum it up. So the plot of it is that he's a US soldier, even though he's Jean-Claude Van Damme. Work that one out. And he's sort of gone AWOL, and the US are trying to bring him back because he's got really advanced martial arts skills. So they're trying to bring him back because they think he could be a useful weapon. But he's more interested in pursuing his passion, which is like martial arts and the tournaments out in Japan. So he's out in Japan where he's working his way up to compete in these tournaments. So you've got that plot, which plays out similar to like a Karate Kid movie where you build up to this big tournament at the end, and you see the different rounds of the tournament. So you see him work his way up, and of course, with it being the sort of movie it is, you've got this really over-the-top, like, muscled-up villain who's... The way it works out is, of course, the final is going to be Van Damme against this villain. And, like, even though in reality, when you have this tournament, it's just, like, competition and there's no malice in reality. Like, just for the film, they have to make it, like, good guy versus bad guy type thing.
Yeah.
And... it's one of those where he's being pursued at the same time. There's a little bit of a romance story. It runs through all the sort of cliches you've seen in these movies. His friend faces like this big monster bad guy who's going to make it to the final, and he really like hospitalizes his friend. So then that gives him extra motivation to go and kick his ass in the final. So it's like that kind of thing. And it's fine. It's quite entertaining cheese. The fight scenes, I think for the time they were good. Maybe they don't hold up that well, but they are quite graphic at time, because there's this famous scene where like there's literally a bone hanging out of someone's leg. I'm not sure how well it looks now, like the effect of it, but it's still pretty shocking when you see it. And it's one of these really cheesy, quite entertaining movies. You just switch your brain off. It is actually based on a true story. Like, the Van Damme character is a real character. It says at the end of the movie. So, and it says about how he went on to set all these records and what have you. So that's quite interesting, at least. But it's pretty good, dumb fun. It like ticks the boxes. It's definitely more of a guilty pleasure movie. There's some ridiculously cartoon chase scenes, like when these like representatives of like the army are like chasing him through like Japan, and so there's a scene where they're chasing him through where you get like the boats, and he's like diving over the boats, and they're just like stumbling around, and they fall over at one point. They fall into the river. But it's just one of those things where he's not even moving that fast, sort of thing, and that you just got, because one of them is Forrest Whitaker. Like, it's quite an early role for him, so he's reasonably young, whereas the other guy is like pretty old and like bumbling, and he's. I recognise the actor as well. He was in Diamonds Are Forever, the James Bond film. Like, he was like Phoenix Lighter in that. But yeah, at this point he's getting pretty old, so he's really struggling to keep up. The guy playing like the Van Damme's character's friend, I've seen him in quite a lot of things. Like, he's in an episode of The X-Files. I think he might be in Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. I think he might be in that. He tends to play like kind of biker style villains, like quite oddball type villains. So he's got a certain look to him, and the way he's introduced is just so like hilarious, because he's on a bus and Van Damme's on the bus as well. and he's just trying to chat up this Japanese woman, and he's like, it's something like, "Hey, baby, you want to come home with a real big man?" And she can't understand him, and so he just keeps talking anyway, like he's oblivious to the fact that she can't understand like American. But then it's this really cartoony thing where Van Damme's rolling his eyes, but yeah, they still become friends, and like you're actually like meant to like this other guy, but it's just one of those movies where you just go with it, sort of thing. Like you're just meant to think he's a bit of a doofus, and then you sort of warm to him as the movie goes on. But yeah, it's a fun movie. It's a solid movie, I'd say, just for a switch your brain off. A bit of nostalgia for this sort of movie, and it's going back to my youth a bit because my older brother always used to rent that type of movie on like VHS and bring them home on a certain night of the week. And it's one of those things where at the time I was a little bit too young to be watching it, but I would sit there anyway watching it with him. And it's a bit of a bonding moment. And it's one of those things where it just feels good to get away with it, sort of thing, where you are a bit under the age limit. Like, yeah, because when it becomes legal, it's not as much fun type thing.
I know, it's like growing up where you're like, oh, I can watch a rated R film, but I'm only 13 or whatever. But it's like, I feel like watching movies that are definitely a little bit for more mature audiences is like either it's a bonding moment or it's a potential like trauma. But that's awesome. Yeah, I love that.
It's a good, fun, dumb watch, basically. So yeah, that's Bloodsport.
For centuries, the Society of the Black Dragon has sanctioned an ancient rite of combat, known as the Kumite, open only to the world's most lethal warriors. It has never been won by a Westerner.
You are not Japanese. I can do it.
Now, for the first time, the true story of American super agent Frank Dukes can be revealed.
Uncle Sam can't afford to let you get hurt.
I'm going to Hong Kong.
Frank is going to fight in the Kumite, and we're here to stop him.
An awesome human weapon.
It hurts me just looking at it.
Who infiltrates the Chinese underworld.
I did not come this far to stop now.
Take him.
To enter a forbidden competition.
Couldn't you just get me in?
Strict rules, no press.
You telling me you never break rules?
Where every fighting style, every worthy opponent, every deadly technique clash in savage combat.
Time to separate the men from the boys.
And only one will triumph.
Now I break you.
International martial arts sensation Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport, the true story of the ultimate champion.